Hey guys, my name is Enrique and welcome to another review. Now, in this case, I should make some clarifications. I'm a Power Rangers fan. I've been a Power Rangers fan throughout my whole life. Ever since I was born and watched all the reruns, all the episodes, and all the seasons, I always consider Power Rangers something I love. But I never considered something which was the origins of Power Rangers, the footage, all the action sequences that they come from. And I always thought that they always integrated those or they always filmed those scenes in America. But I realized after a long time that it was from a series from Japan called Super Sentai. So in 2019, I started to watch some episodes of Super Sentai, and needless to say, I was engaged. Every season that I watched of Super Sentai was completely different from the product that I used to watch as a kid, but in many ways, I enjoyed it. Some I don't consider to be as good as Power Rangers, some I consider to be as silly or too over the top for me. But in other cases, I appreciated the story, the characters, and the ingenuity with their storytelling. So I appreciate that and I started to watch it more often than not. So I was wondering which Super Sentai season I could talk about because there plenty of seasons, especially considering the fact that this is the 50th anniversary of Super Sentai. So, what season can I talk about? Well, I'm going to start talking about the series that I'm starting to watch regularly, and that is number one Sentai Gozyuger. So, for those who don't know, let's talk about the season and the stories. At the very least, the first 5 episodes, in which I'm going to talk about in this review. Although I should warn you some things because this is going to be a little bit alien for those who don't watch Super Sentai. And basically, they have different teams, different names. Some of them that were adapted into Power Ranger seasons like Mighty Morphin or Wild Force or any other. They're going to have a different name. So I'm going to try to include some of the context images in this video. Unless you're watching if you're listening on Spotify. In that case, it's going to be more complicated than that. But if you want to know about Super Sentai, then I suggest you watch other videos that can talk about it. And probably get a Wikipedia because this is going to be confusing for some people. So I'm going to try my best and to resume the characters, the story, and all the things that they included in this season. And I'm going to try to break it down into simple ways so it's easier for people to watch. So without further ado, let's talk about how the story begins. A long time ago, there was a legendary battle involving all the Megazords from the previous Super Sentai series. I know they have different names like giant robots or mechas, but for the purposes of making sense of the situation, I'm going to call them Megazords. Needless to say, they were involved in a big battle with a giant force that remained mysterious throughout the entire show, and we won't know until further episodes. But in this case, we got the appearance of one Megazord called Tegazord. This particular robot involved all the powers of the previous swords in order to defeat this evil, but it caused all the mechas, all the Megazords to get frozen in time, and despite the world being saved, the whole existence of these swords remained frozen in time, and their powers were split into rings, which are the powers of all the Super Sentais. Fast forwarding to the present time, we see that a group of bad guys called Ariases, or at the very least no ones, are invading Earth and they have their own purposes of invading. Basically, they want to save the world and become number one. It's confusing, but it's basically they're trying to save the world by, well, enslaving everybody. But little did we know, a young boy called Hoeru, who's receiving the power of a ring, starts receiving messages from the Tegasort, which asking what is his biggest wish. He doesn't know what his wish is, so Tegasort proposes him to become a Sentai warrior, that he fights all these evil forces and trying to become number one in whatever he wants to be. So he takes the power and Huero becomes Gosyu Wolf. In this case, the Red Ranger with the wolf form. And with the power of Tegasort and alongside other allies that also got different rings, he will try to save the world, discover what his passion is, and become number one alongside the other people. Thus, him and alongside four other members, they will become number one Sentai Gozyuger. That's pretty much the plot of this story, and it's basically the entire plot of the episodes is going to revolve around getting to know the people who are possessing all the rings, who are trying to become number one in their individual stories, and figure out who the evil force is threatening the entire Earth. So that's what happens in the entire show, and that's what is happening in these 5 episodes. Now let's talk about characters because each one have their own individual motivations and personalities. So let's start with the main one. The Red Ranger of this season is called Hoeru, aka Gosyu Wolf. Now, I don't know the actors' names, so I'm not going to focus on that and instead focus on the characters that they portray. Basically, Hoeru is a lone wolf. He does things by himself, but he's pretty much an idiot savant. When he tries to get a job, he gets fired. He tries to pay the mortgage alongside the landlady. He lives in a restaurant, so that means his economical situation is not good, which I can sympathize. And when he receives the power of Tegasort, he now realizes that he has an opportunity to become number one in something. But unfortunately, he doesn't know what his wishes are, and it might be due to a past that he had happened to him, and thus one of his parents, his mother, told him to not wish for anything, or at the very least that's what I understand. But Hoeru, in his quest to realize who he is, as well as trying to get a job and become number one with this power, he will fight the forces that are threatening his entire Earth and the people who he cares about. In particular, the landlady and her son. And that's something that we see him go through. And with the interactions that he has with the other Gozyugers, he starts to form like a team. But he still does things on his own, and he's still, a lone wolf. So he still tries to figure out these type of powers and how to, be much more involved with a team. So that's what I like. I like that every time that he fights, he lets a howl like a wolf. This is probably the first Sentai that involves a wolf as the Red Ranger, or at the very least, the Red Ranger has an animal motif that involves a wolf, which in other seasons is always portrayed by other colors and other teammates. Sometimes the sixth member, or sometimes in the original five. So I appreciate that the Sentai is trying to do something different. Now let's talk about the Blue Ranger of this season, Rico, aka Gosyu Leon. This guy, we don't know very much about him, but we know that he's an idol, or at the very least, he's a singer who I think sings like K-pop music. It's hard to grasp the type of music that he starts singing, but it is basically wanting to become a number one idol in anything. He's also a very pretty boy. He basically is also a a boy who chases girls as well, who falls in love, or at the very least makes women to fall in love with him, which is going to be involved a villain of this season, and is going to make things complicated. But little did we know about him, only that he is a singer and he uses the powers of the Gozyuger in order to become number one in his goals, which is become a lover or a singer or whatever theme they want to make. Yet it's hard to say what is his motivations. Why did he got these powers? But we know that he was at the beginning of the season and he was one of the first to receive the power. His weapon of choice is basically like a weapon, a gun with the form of the lion. That is almost like a AK-47, something like that. But it's basically has the powers of the lion. Something I should mention that the four members have their own individual powers, which might be related to the leaders of the original Sentais with their own animal motif, like lion or Tyrannosaurus or eagle or unicorn. It's basically like that, paying homage to the previous leaders of the Super Sentai teams. And this one is no different, since we're going to see him portrayed the powers of the lion, and is going to come into play in later episodes. But now let's talk about another member of this team, Ryuji, aka the Gosyu Tyranno. In this case, he has the powers of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and he's also a very religious zealot who is basically, let's say, praying to Tegasort, since he considers this being as a very godlike entity that wants to save the world. So Ryuji decides to dedicate his life as well as his power to the service and the prayers of Tegasort. So with that, he also owns the restaurant that the landlady was administrating, and decides to make it into not only a restaurant for the people, but also like a church, more for himself, since he is the only one who prays for Tegasort. But yeah, his powers also come from Tyrannosaurus Rex. He has like a Tyranno hammer, and he's really religious. In fact, Hoero, when he uses Tegasort for other things than fights, like for example, scarf or try to find treasures, Ryuji gets unbelievably upset and he goes into attack mode. It's hilarious. Oh, I should mention, each of the individuals have their own individual powers. For example, Hoeru has speed and the howling that is very loud. For Rico, the Blue Ranger, he has the power of super hearing, which can hear everything from a distance. And for Ryuji, in this case, the Yellow Ranger, he has the powers of strength, which means that he is stronger than anybody. So yeah, very hilarious as a religious man, but hey, I can sympathize. I'm religious too. But next, let's talk about a member that I actually enjoy watching, Kinjino, aka Gosyu Eagle, the Green Ranger. This is a different Sentai member than any other, because this guy that you see right here, this little boy, is actually an 80-year-old man. He basically wants to become young again and to try to relive his youth. So when he's presented with the powers of Tegasort, in this case the eagle powers, he's presented with an opportunity. What is his biggest wish? And that is to become a party person. He wants to live life again, to become, free spirit, and to use it to relive his youth as he was 80 years ago. So in this case, he gets his powers in a young body in order to not only fight alongside the others, but also to become a party person. I enjoy this character a lot. It's probably one of the characters that I sympathize the most because he is this man in a young man's body trying to relive his youth, trying to stop being an old man, always angry and always trying to do the right thing, or at the very least, trying to be so stubborn. And he knows that too. He wants to be more open minded, more free, and more kind to other people. And I appreciate that. Hell, it kind of reminds me of my grandfather because he is in good shape at his 80 years. So I appreciate this season's character. Kinjino is hilarious. And the episode that is focused on him is really touching. I'm not gonna lie, I cried on that episode. It's episode 4. It was really touching because it was watching this old man not only making amends with his family members, but also to reinvigorate himself, to become younger, and to be not only a teammate, but also a party person. I really enjoy this character a lot. But there is a character that I never thought that I would enjoy just as much as Kinjino, and that is Sumino, aka Gozyu Unicorn. The only lady ranger of this season, the Black Ranger. In other seasons, the girl is always portrayed with the colors yellow or blue, or sometimes, in most cases, pink, because obviously they want to make a distinction between the ladies of the Sentai members. This is the only member, the only female member of the Sentai team, and she's probably the most hilarious and the most tragic of them all. You see, the entire goal of this girl is to find her sister Otto, who was missing, and she tries to find out where she is. She was a cop at one point, but because she was so desperate in her attempts to find her sister, she lost her job and became a private investigator. Similar to Jessica Jones, but without the worry about buying booze or not having the same attitude of, I don't care about this person or my look. She's actually very luxurious and high class, or wants to be the high class luxurious detective. That's one of the personalities. She's very stubborn, but she's also very courageous, and at the same time, she's funny. She is probably the youngest of the members, since she's trying to be independent and tries to become number one at her job and skills. So yeah, it's definitely one of the most hilarious characters. Tragic but hilarious. But we don't know about Otto, or we don't follow this story in later episodes, so we won't know what's gonna happen next. So we're gonna have to wait the following episodes, probably at the mid-season of the Sentai season. But yeah, her powers involve reading minds of their other people, including their opponents. So she can use that, and she can summon powers like the unicorn drill. Oh, I forgot to mention, Kinjino has the power to throw arrows like with an eagle bow. And Sumino's powers in this are basically a drill that can penetrate or attack their opponents. So yeah, I really like that. Now let's talk about the main generals, or the main bad guys of this season. Fire Candle, Lady Bouquet, and in this, the monster pets that they have, Mr. Shiny Knife and Mrs. Sweet Cake. Let's start with Fire Candle. He is the hot-headed of the bad guys. Basically wants to prove that he is number one, but also be a savior in his own way. He's not good at that, but he's hilarious. And I gotta say, he's the kindest of the generals of the bad guys that I've seen in those seasons, because he actually cares about the foot soldiers and actually forms a bond with them. That is hilarious. But yeah, he also forms a rivalry with the Red Ranger Hoeru, because they both want to be number one at anything that they want to be. In this case, save the world. So they have this fiery rivalry in which they want to outdo themselves and outdo each other, basically. Then we got Lady Bouquet. She's basically the general with a crazy look. She has like a look of a bouquet flower and a pink haircut. So she's hilarious, basically. At the beginning, she has the same motivations as Fire Candle, that she wants to save the world, but by enslaving people. That's their goal. But after listening to the Blue Ranger songs, because he's an idol, she starts to become like a fan. And while she's trying to do the beating of her master, she's still infatuated with the Blue Ranger. But here's the thing: in civilian form, Rico is what Lady Bouquet is in love with. But in some events that I won't get into, but in episode 3, she hates the Blue Ranger, not knowing that that is actually the idol that she's idolizing. I know. It's ridiculous. And every time that she screams, I always call her nails on a chalkboard, because she always becomes like an outrageous fan or an outrageous screamer. Like, she's becoming like a fan that doesn't know her boundaries. It's hilarious. But now let's talk about Mr. Shiny Knife and Mrs. Sweet Cake. They're like, well, I should say not generals, but they're also like a couple in one body. Basically, Shiny Knife and Sweet Cake are husband and wife in one body. They're basically also the monster of the week. They're trying to fight the Rangers. In fact, most of these generals fight the Rangers of this season on their own with their powers and their giant mechas. So I actually like that they are bad guys that are more active and are willing to go to the front lines. So it's good to see. And maybe it's just me, but the looks of Mr. Shiny Knife and Mrs. Sweet Cake have a resemblance to one of the bad guys from the season Koryu Sentai Kyoryuja, which is the season of Power Rangers Dino Charge. But hey, that's just me. It's just they have a similar look. Now let's talk about the monsters. The monsters of this season are different from previous ones. They utilize people and their desires in order to create monsters. The no ones in this case. No ones have different themes like treasure hunters, meddlers, party persons, or popularity men. Basically, they want to become number one as well. And they also act like the monster of the week, in which they attack people. But most of their motivations are basically to become number one in their individual theme. And that comes into play into each episode. For example, in the second episode, the No One Treasure Hunter wants to become the richest man and the richest person who wants to capture all the gold. In the third episode, we see a monster who wants to win the popularity of everyone. Well, basically the majority of Japan, which involves another person. In the fourth, we see a monster, a no one monster that wants to be a party person, that wants to party all the time without resting. And in episode 5, we see a monster, a no one that wants to become a meddler, a person that wants to interfere and help other people. In its own way, not necessarily being kind, but still. Normally these monsters, they don't grow giant size, so there's no worry about that, but they have to recover the people that they use in order to free them from their monsters, in order to take away their power and thus defeating them. That's the goal for the Gozyugers, to save the people, basically use their swords in order to get the people out of the monster and defeat the monster after. That is the ingenuity that they imply in this episode. The foot soldiers of this season are called Ayarser, or is I think pronounced Ajaiser. Yeah, Ajaiser. I'm gonna call it Ajaisers. Basically, the Agizers are the soldiers of this season, in which they involve them having a bell ring in their heads. But they are the individual types of Agizers. In this case, the stable ones are the ones who fight the front battles, the pawns of this season, while the senior Agizers are basically the generals that go into battle with their own individual personality and their own mechas. They each have also a different type of theme as well, different from the no ones, but they're basically paying tribute, I think, to the Super Sentais since they have individual themes and logos. And they also have their own mechas, which also are in the form of ring bells. So that is hilarious. Oh, I should also mention that both Fire Candle and Lady Bouquet have their own individual swords. Once again, going back to the fact that they are generals that are willing to go to the front lines to battle the Sentai team. So, yeah, I appreciate that. The theme of Fire Candle is basically a mech suit or a megazord in the form of a candle. And in Lady Bouquet's case, it's basically like in the form of an ice queen, if I'm not mistaken, or a crystal princess, something like that. But it's basically in the form of a bouquet and a crystal, if that makes any sense. I should mention that because this is paying tribute to the Super Sentai teams that came all those years ago, they're using something called Sentai rings. Now, in order to explain this, I need to tell you about the previous Sentai teams. You see, after the legendary battle with the Megazords, all the powers were scattered across different parts of the planet, which leads to other people using the powers of the previous Sentai teams, or to make it more simple, to the previous Red Rangers that were leading their individual teams, each person different from the original ones. None of these people who use the rings are previous members of the Super Sentai teams. Well, except for one, but it's very different. But yeah, basically they possess the powers of the original Super Sentais, and depending on the episode, they either stay with the powers or relinquish them or get defeated. Which whoever wins those rings can adopt those powers as well. So if by any chance you have the powers of, say, Zyuranger, the Mighty Morphin Red Ranger, you possess the powers of the Power Sword, and you possess the Megazord as well, and you might get other powers from other people. Say if you get the powers from another Sentai team, you can use it in your battles. So use it and collect them. The idea is that whoever wins and collects all the powers can become more powerful. And that's what happens in these episodes. We see not only the stories of the Gozyugers, but also how they interact with the people who acquire these powers and how it impacts them, how they become involved with the theme of the episode or the stories. And now let's talk about the Megazords of this season. Now, they're called Tegaswords, or in this case, it's one Tegasword. It's basically one sword, which is the giant hand, in which not only did they use in order to invoke the powers of their Sentai teams as well as the individual powers, but it can also grow giant size, and they can form one Megazord. In this case, Tegasword form. In the case of the red one, is basically the theme of the wolf. Basically, he uses his power and has other animal themes in order to change forms. So let's say Tegasword has the power of the wolf. So he wants to change it to something else. He can become a lion-themed Megazord, or a Tyrannosaurus Megazord, or an Eagle Megazord, or a Unicorn Megazord, depending on the pilot that is piloting the Tegasword. In this case, I should also mention that the cockpit has a different distinction. It's only one person. There is no swords combining in this season. So it's each individual member of the Rangers piloting the Tegazord in their own individual way and with their own individual powers. And they don't fight them in their, in their regular forms, but using some sort of outfit. And the outfit, as you mentioned, that is very similar to the White Ranger powers of Tommy Oliver. But I should clarify that is also part of the Sentai, since there was a White Ranger using that kind of skin color. But it's basically kind of paying tribute to Tommy Oliver from this season. Maybe a tribute to Power Rangers. We will see some tributes in this season, but yeah, this is basically paying tribute to JADF, if that makes any sense. Overall, the entire season is basically the basics. We see Tegazord, we see the members of the Sentai team, their individual motivations and their own personalities. And throughout the season is basically them finding the rings, defeating the bad guys, and become number one in their individual themes. And we're going to see how it advances throughout the next episodes. So yeah, I highly enjoy this one. It's not only a good tribute to Super Sentai, but also a good season to see how each individual handles the situation. And as I mentioned, that it's not necessarily a team that is united by and does things together. They're basically individuals, but trying to be together in order to be number one in their individual goals. And we see how they're gonna follow up in later episodes. But yeah, the first episodes I highly enjoy them, and I recommend you watch them in case you want to be curious about Super Sentai, or if you don't know anything about Super Sentai, maybe this season will help you understand the themes and what each ranger represented. Maybe you'll find something, but I'm going to continue to talk about this season in particular. I'll say that my favorite season is actually Go-Go Sentai Bokenger, and one day I'm going to talk about that season. But overall, this is the one that I'm enjoying thus far. And if you want to see more, then go ahead, watch it. It's available now on other platforms that show Super Sentai. But if you get the chance, watch it. You won't regret it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Do you like this season? Did this awake your curiosity about Super Sentai? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time, okay? I'm being Enrique, and I'll see you soon. Peace.